So, episode number 4, the real story behind K Squared. I am Rusty Krause, and I am a licensed contractor. We are collectively owners of K Squared Construction. This is my beautiful wife, Brenna.
Hello.
Hi there. So today we are talking a little bit about meeting the builder and the designer. We've touched on it a little bit in some past episodes, but
It's supposed to be a little more fun today.
hope so. Yeah. First question is, let's just start with the basics, and maybe you can tell our listeners who you are and what you do at K Squared.
Okay. So I'm Brenna Krause. I wear many hats at K Squared, but my favorite and most important hat is my designer hat. So Rusty and I are a really good team. We meet with our clients and help them work through their projects, from anything from a bathroom remodel all the way up to building a new custom home. So my primary role, I guess, would be considered sales, design, and then I also do a little accounting too, which is not my favorite.
Yeah, I think that's pretty typical in these mom and pop type shops, right? Small businesses. Somebody's usually, wearing multiple hats. Somebody has to not only put on their sales hat, but also has to do the bookkeeping and whatnot.
Count the beans.
Yeah.
So how about you? Why don't you tell us about yourself and what you do?
Yeah. So I am also mostly into the kind of what I hate being called this really, but I am in that more of that sales role. And I think I hate saying that. Hate's maybe a little bit of a strong word, but I don't love being called a salesman, right? Because I think there's just a connotation that comes with that. But, when it really comes down to it, that's what I do, right? That's what we do is we're really selling ourselves, but we're really selling a process too. So I am, again, reluctantly like to say in sales, I do a lot of the marketing kind of behind the scenes. I'm doing some CAD drawings too. I think we work on those collectively. I do some of the nuts and bolts parts of the CAD drawings and the details. And there's a handful of things that I do, but I think that's probably the overarching title and task that I do.
So what got you into construction in the first place?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question.
Me.
Yeah. So actually, that's kind of true.
Partially.
It is. So I actually went to, a lot of people don't know this about me. I actually went to junior college right out of high school. Thought I wanted to be a computer programmer. So I actually did a lot of the classes to get me, really close to there. And so I had kind of a panic moment after about year 3 or 4 of going through the classes and the motions of being a computer programmer. And although I was really good at it, I realized towards the end there that sitting in a chair for 12 hours was not something that really appealed to me, especially as I was, that young, right? 19, 20 years old. And so, I had a little bit of a panic moment, and I said, you know what, I'm just going to put school on hold for right now and really get my head straight and figure out what it is that I actually want to do, because sitting in a chair for 12 hours is probably not, again, what I want to do. And so I actually took a job at a structural steel company. And so that really lasted for a few years, and then 9/11 came. And so that was actually a really big deal for the steel industry because, again, people got really nervous about building buildings. It was like, this is horrible to say, but people said, hey, anything that, you could fly a plane into, like, we're going to stop that right now. We're pulling the plug. So the steel industry, especially this kind of like large scale, multi-story building structural steel industry, literally just fell apart like overnight. And we were used to working long days, long hours, and immediately we were cut back to like 40 hours a week. And because we worked so much overtime, a lot of us didn't even know how to survive on 40 hours a week. We were just, getting our normal paycheck, right? That prompted me to go out and look for something else because I needed to try to get back to the income that I was making when I was working 50, 60 hours a week at the steel company. And we had just met. And so this was, what was it, 9 months approximately? 9/11 happened after.
6 months. That was our 6-month anniversary.
That's right. Okay. Well, we met, though. We met about 9 months
True.
before that.
Good point. Good point. I'll give you that.
So we met, again, went through that whole part of the story. And then you were working for a builder at the time. And so I asked you if you thought that there was any opportunities for me there. And so I went and interviewed. And I remember now my interview, I can close my eyes and sit in that room.
I remember sitting outside the glass walls of the office trying to watch and see.
Yeah,
I mean, like him?
That was pretty nerve-wracking because I was still pretty young at the time, and
they gave you a hard time.
They did, and I sat down with the VP of the company, and I sat down with the VP of construction, and if I'm being really honest, like I probably didn't have what it took to be in the role that I was applying for.
Yeah,
and I don't want to say I kind of faked my way through it, but I definitely was adamant that, I didn't take something that was lesser than that. I felt like my talents were stronger than what some of the entry-level positions were. And so they had actually, suggested that I take this entry-level position. And I said, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in being a superintendent. And so they kind of powwowed a little bit. And actually I remember Jim, I won't say his last name, but I remember Jim coming back in the office and saying, hey, I really like this guy because
he didn't want you to know that.
No, he really didn't. But,
yeah.
I think the point is that he knew that I was kind of persistent and wasn't willing to just kind of roll over. And I think that was part of what it took to be a superintendent.
You need to be in that spot, yeah.
Had I just kind of folded right there, I think that would have been their answer, right? That was not the right place for me. The field can be a pretty rough place.
Yeah.
There's a lot of hard personalities out there, especially when you get into some of the front end
rough trades.
Yeah, we say rough trades. So concrete framing. Again, and the longer they've been in it, the harder they get. That shell gets a lot harder.
Well, and the younger you are, and the older they are, the harder they are on you too.
Yeah.
That was one of my challenges coming into that career as a young person too. It was just gaining respect from people that are older than you, and that was always tough. Even in the office, like I think even probably harder out in the field, but even inside the office too. I mean, I had, as I moved later on into my career, I had people that I was, above that were older than me, and they didn't always like that, and it was hard to figure out if that was a me thing or a them thing, right? Like,
yeah.
So.
I don't think it was. I mean, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say that it was more difficult for me than it was for you. I think it's just different, right? It's just, the field, especially back then, was very dominated. I think it still is today, but it was very dominated by men. And so, I think the office staff was more dominated by females, right?
Yeah.
So when you got a lot of females in a room together, things can get tough, right?
Lots of tears,
right?
Drama.
Right? It's kind of the opposite, right?
Yeah.
Because in the field, there's probably not as many tears, but there's a lot of screaming and yelling at each other, right? And so
male temper tantrums.
Right, and exactly. And that's not always productive either, right? But you do, at least in this time frame, I think you really did have to kind of learn how to survive that. You had to really be thick-skinned to get through it, right? Because I watched so many people come in and out of these trades. Like they would come in and they would just quit because they're like, I just can't handle this, right? And it's not for everybody, right? And there are a lot of different, I'm not saying that this is any different than any other job, right? There are a lot of professions that have, high stress, different types of stress. And again, like there are lots of things that I definitely could not do, right? I couldn't be a surgeon. That's just not me. There are lots of things and lots of jobs that have, can have elements of high stress. And that was definitely one of them.
Yeah. Well, gosh, we had a friend our age or slightly older than us at the time that was working in your same position that had a heart attack. Do you remember that? Yeah.
Oh, I do. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. And that was, who knows, job related or not job related. But there were moments in the boom where, it was stressful.
Yeah. I know when we were working for builders, especially in that time, this was back, I'm specifically thinking about like maybe around '03, '04,
Yeah.
somewhere in there. Elk Grove was like the number one growth city in the United States. Like, I want to say 2 years, maybe more, but approximately 2 years in a row. We were building houses. We couldn't sell them, or we couldn't build them as fast as we were selling them,
Yeah.
right? And I say I wasn't the one selling the houses, but the sales team was actually selling more than we could produce. And the builder that we were working for at the time was not the like typical track like
Right.
builder, right? Where you
Pick your
built
lot,
10,
pick your plan.
where you built like 10 houses in a row. They did the like spot lot building where you'd pick your house, pick your plan, like you just said. And, so you'd have one house here, and then you'd have one, 3 blocks away. And then you'd have another one that's, 3 blocks the other direction.
Added steps to your day.
Yeah, big time, right? And made me realize too that I never, after walking houses every
Never
day,
wanted a 2-story.
I never wanted stairs. I'm like,
And as a kid, that's all I wanted was a house with stairs.
Yeah.
And when we started looking for a house, you told me I will not live in a 2-story, and you crushed my 10-year-old girl dreams.
yeah, I'm really sorry about that, but I actually am really glad that I stuck to my guns on that one,
Me
because
too.
I think, and again, I think there's a good place for stairs, right? And I loved stairs as a kid too. I don't know who didn't love
Yeah.
stairs as a kid. My cousin's house had stairs, and used to love playing on the stairs. And,
Yeah.
getting in laundry baskets and sliding down the stairs and getting in trouble for putting holes in the wall. But once I started walking them every single day, it wasn't about the exercise. It was just like, it just felt so inefficient, right? You'd forget something. You'd go downstairs, you start to walk to the next door house, and you'd be like, did I forget something upstairs? You gotta go back. You gotta go back upstairs. I know people with stairs are listening going, I feel your pain, right? But it was just something that, I just decided at that point that I just didn't want to deal with in my life.
So fast forward, you and I both spent many years with a few different builders. Fast forward to when we decided to start our own company. What happened?
So I worked for the builder that we talked about for, I don't know, a few years. And then I was actually somewhat poached by another builder that wanted me to come over and take over their custom build division. So they had some infill projects that they needed done. They were smaller projects. I think the largest one we did was like 17 lots. And then kind of sprinkled around that were some of the lots or the homes that were actually being built, mostly for the ownership of this particular place that I was working for at the time. And then this was what? I guess this would have been about right before '06, so
Mm-hmm.
'05,
It was 05.
'06. And so I had started to see the beginnings of the market shifting. It was really the first time that I had gone through this, but it was definitely changing, right? Things were slowing down.
And the beginnings of some trouble within.
Yeah, I think we couldn't quite put our finger on it,
Yeah.
right? I think some of it was just age and experience. I don't think we really truly knew what was going on around us, but you could just feel that something was changing.
Lots of rumors.
Just the winds were kind of...
It was weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird time.
We could really tell that just the winds were kind of changing a little bit. The dynamic of just the businesses were changing. People were getting actually laid off. And so that got me thinking I should probably just have my contractor's license as kind of a fallback plan. And so, not knowing even what that meant. So I went and applied for my contractor's license. I did the school, took the test. I had at that point I had the time you needed, I think 4 years of, kind of provable supervision over construction projects, different aspects of construction projects. So I had to go through that process. And then I actually got my license in the mail the same week that I was actually laid off from the builder that I was working for. And it did actually come as a surprise. So I wasn't part of the senior management, but I was actually pretty high up in terms of the superintendents. Was effectively kind of the highest level superintendent. And so I was actually privy to a lot of the conversations happening around me about who was getting laid off. And I always kind of thought like, well, hopefully they would just, tell me before. And so there just happened to be one guy there that just, rumor is that I was added to the list late. So I knew that there was a wave of layoffs coming. Anyway, I ended up on the list. And so I said, it is what it is, right? I know there were a lot of tears in that room that day. I kind of just said, well, it's just a job, I got to just kind of move on. I'm not going to, cry my way back into this thing. So, ironically, like a few days before that, I think we had received my license in the mail, and you were in your own interesting scenario. Maybe you can piggyback off of that.
Well, I was 7 months pregnant with our first child. So I was still gainfully employed, but I was planning on taking maternity leave. And, I had one foot out the door as far as that went. Like I was planning on going out on maternity leave about a month before my due date. And then I was fully planning on actually going back to work after we had Kaylee. And I was, because I'm the worrier, I was pretty scared. And I think you'd always expressed wanting to do your own thing and be your own boss and, start a company. And, I was always scared of that. And how do we do that? How do we pay our bills? How does that even work? I was very comfortable collecting my paycheck from someone else.
Yeah.
And, so it was scary, but I had nothing but confidence in knowing that you were going to work as hard as you needed to make all of that happen. So that was what kind of enabled me to just like take a step back and trust that we were going to figure it out. So
the American dream.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we talk about that all the time because it's just such a silly story. We talk about how this all started and why it started, and so many people get into business for themselves because they want to do this. They feel like they're really good at what they do. And I felt like I think I was really good at what I did. But, looking back now, I mean, I really think about how stupid that really was.
I know.
Right? I mean, if you really think about where we were at, we have you're 7 months pregnant, you're a couple months away from, us having our first, child. I was pretty excited, to be honest, but I had no idea where the money was going to come from, right? We didn't have a book of business. We didn't have a really good plan. So I think there was a lot of just luck, right?
Yeah.
I mean, again, it wasn't, I know we've talked about this before, it wasn't for a lack of hard work and trying, but at the same time, a lot of it was just luck and really getting out there and kind of pounding the pavement and letting people know that, we were new and we would take whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing anything.
Yeah.
You got a fence board that needs to be replaced, I'll take it.
You got a GFI that needs to be reset, I'll come do it.
Yeah, whatever, right?
Yeah.
If I could do it, I was doing it, so... What was the biggest change that you've seen in how we approach projects now versus how we approach these projects when we first started?
Well, gosh. I mean, the biggest change is all of it. Everything that we've done. I mean, it's been 2 decades of trial and error, really. I think we started, back then just with much simpler projects so that it wasn't as complicated. And I think we always at some root level tried to get my design experience factored into what we were doing. We knew we needed those specifications and that information. We knew we needed that information to build, but we didn't necessarily know how to implement that and how to get that from our clients. I mean, we've done, I think about the time when, we made kitchen packages and I made baskets of, option A, B, and C with materials in them.
Yeah.
And do you want to pick this kitchen or that kitchen? And, just so many different things that we tried and then honestly failed at, and
Well, I think
or that we figured out they didn't work or they didn't serve us until we really started doing what we do now.
it is funny that you say that because that is more of like what you talk about with like the packages. That's more of like a one size fits all,
Yeah.
right? You're trying to actually pack people into this box,
Yeah.
which is this one size fits all type, package mentality. And I know there's still a lot of businesses that do that. They try to package things up,
Yeah.
And put a little bow on it for people. But, we talk to people now, we talk about how each project is truly unique, like to itself, right? Like we've literally worked on the same street on houses that have the same floor plan and even had projects of the same type, right? So there's a kitchen in this floor plan and a kitchen in this floor plan, and they're wildly different in cost. They're wildly different in scope,
Yeah.
right? So, it's really difficult to create a package and try to, put somebody in there.
I think for so many years we spent so much time trying to simplify the process, right? Simplify design. And even we had moments where we were trying to simplify estimating. I mean, we tried to create like a quick spreadsheet where we could like turn around an estimate while we were at someone's house, right?
Yeah.
How crazy is that? And I think I'm proud of us because our wheels were always turning on how to better the situation. But I think for so many years we focused on how to make it simpler when really the root of that was trying to spend less time designing things for free for people.
Right.
And how to just, make that simple so we don't have to spend the time that we're not getting paid for to put their project together. When in actuality, we needed to do the opposite, was like, let the process take as much time as it needs, get paid for your expertise and your vision and your, abilities, and deliver a great project to our clients. So it's almost like we went 180 on what we were doing.
We really did.
Yeah.
But you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Right. And so, and I tell people this a lot too, is that we didn't make this up, right? We've plucked pieces from different contractors, from, different places, from the commercial world, the residential world. We've tried to figure out what parts and pieces work the best. And ultimately what we've tried to do is figure out what is the best way to get a client from A to Z with as few problems as possible, with as little financial burden in excess of what they've already agreed to, right? So change orders. How do we eliminate that? How do we keep people on schedule? How do we keep people as happy as humanly possible through a process that's already very stressful? And that's really what we've spent the last, again, 20 plus years doing, is trying to refine this process so that the client experience is the best that it can be.
Yeah. So looking back over the last 20 years, what are you most proud of what we've built in this business?
Oh, gosh. I think just the process in general, because I do think that while this is not completely unique to our business or our company, there are other contracting companies and even design build companies that do have this process. I do think that ours is still a little bit unique. There are still some people that are also doing it this way too, but we really have like the build expertise in the office, and we have the design expertise in the office. And so I do think that that's a big benefit to our client, because they don't necessarily have to wait for ideas to be bounced back and forth off of each other. And I do think that some contractors kind of go rogue and try to do a lot of the design stuff theirself. And this is not to suggest, this is not like a man-woman thing. This is just about expertise, right? Like, I am pretty good at building, and I'm not real good at the design portion of it. There's certain aspects of design that I think I'm okay at, but not like what you do, right? I think you do something really unique, right? And there are other people who do that as well, but it's not frequent that you have those two true expertises and two licensed professionals and two completely separate trades in the same office that are able to feed off of each other and really help each other, solve problems quickly.
Yeah.
So this next section starts with a really tough question. Well, it's tough for one of us. So let's settle this once and for all. Who's really in charge of K-Squared construction?
I'm going to surprise you with my answer.
Are you? Mm-hmm. Okay, go ahead.
I think it's you.
Oh, wow.
Because I think, the way that we've always structured this, it's, this is, and this might be getting really personal, but our kids and our home life, years ago when the kids were home more and, out of school or whatnot, my hours were a little truncated. So it's always, our family structure has really kind of always been like, your first focus is the business and my first focus is the kids, right? And so I think naturally I've always looked to you as the leader, like at the end of the day, making like the final call on certain things. I know that we discuss things and I have input and all of that. But I think at the end of the day, I feel like you make the final call on most things.
That's very sweet. I might surprise you with my answer.
You think it's me?
No, I think it's both of us.
I do too.
And I think that's actually what I thought you were going to say. But I do think that I know that the business doesn't operate the way that it does right now and the capacity that it does without you, right? I think that you're an integral part of that. And I think as we continue to grow, we realize that there are a lot of integral pieces, right? Now we've got Jordan. Jordan's another really integral piece at this point because he's taken a lot of the hats that we were wearing, right? And now he's wearing those hats. And so he's pretty deeply ingrained in that. So I definitely agree that we both have big parts in the decision-making process for the business, but I definitely think that this ship sinks without you.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Samesies. We always make big decisions together. I don't think we've ever conflicted in much of that. But do you remember our biggest fight from those early Chuck in the Truck days?
So I didn't have a truck to start. I had a van. Mm-hmm. So, we lovingly refer to these smaller contractors as a Chuck and a truck, but I brought home a van. I remember bringing home the van. I remember you being mortified that I had brought home this van, and I was really excited about the van.
Didn't you pay like $700 for it or something ridiculous?
I probably did. I'm sure that's probably part of the reason I was so excited because I got a great deal. We had very little money. We had just started the business. We're kind of pinching pennies. Like we're buying diapers now for the first time in our life. We don't know what we're going to spend money on, but we know we just got to spend as little as possible to try to make, as much as possible. And, my thinking was I got to have some vehicle that can haul around all my tools. And that van, it was terrible.
Oh my gosh. It had no windows.
No. It had windows. I actually blocked them all out.
Oh, I don't remember that. I remember watching you in the driveway replace the carpeting in the back. You put new carpet in there. Oh, it was terrible. I was embarrassed to have that parked in our driveway.
I know. And looking back, I'm embarrassed for you, but I did have a van.
You did.
And that van, it got us through some times. I won't say some good times or some bad times. It just got us through some times. It definitely had its place, right? But it was a giant van. This thing was like ugly brown. God, it was actually really awful. But I blacked out everything because I didn't want people to see in the back and see my tools.
You didn't want your tools get stolen.
But I actually had it about halfway full with tools, and I left the back open so that I could keep things loaded in it. But actually, this is before we had a dump trailer or whatever. I was just putting all the debris and the garbage and trash that we had generated in the back half of the van, and so I had the tools in the front half, and then the junk in the back half.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, it was. And I think still a lot of people manage to get by that way doing the same thing. but I'm not totally sure that was our biggest argument. I actually remember bringing home the trailer. So the trailer that we still have now.
I was going to say which one.
Okay, so see, this is sparking a chord with you, right?
Yeah.
So this is what happened. I was adamant that we needed a trailer because I didn't have enough space in the van for materials and debris and the tools, and so I needed a trailer. And, instead of going out and trying to find a really good deal on a trailer, I just went down to the trailer place and I bought a brand new trailer, a 5x10 with little 2-foot sides.
Oh, you're talking about the little trailer.
Yeah, we still have this trailer
we
today.
We do.
Okay, so but when I came home, I said, hey, I know we usually talk about this stuff, but I really needed this trailer. And your first comment was, how much did you spend on this trailer? And I said, I spent $2,000 on this trailer.
I probably cried.
You were beside yourself. You were so mad at me because I spent $2,000 on this trailer. And now the ironic part is that we still have this trailer and it's lasted 20 years. We spent $2,000 on it. And, we've probably spent, multiple thousands of dollars just on tires and repair and busted axles. But this thing still survives. So I still kind of stand by my investment from back then.
Yeah, you were right. I think it was, for me, it's being the bean counter. It's always about the beans, right? And it's like, it's like you got to spend money to make money kind of concept. And that was, in the early days, that was really hard for me to get behind, right? I wanted to keep the beans and make sure that, we could buy diapers and formula and all that good stuff. And
I know.
You wanted to go buy trailers and tools and vans, and I was like, oh my gosh. So.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think you were definitely the more rational mind, and I think it still helps balance, me out from time to time, but things have changed for sure.
Yeah.
Obviously it wouldn't be crazy for us to go out and buy a $2,000 trailer right now, but trailers aren't $2,000 anymore, brand new either. So anyway, I do think that was a good investment, but it was at the moment in time, I should have ran that by you. So
Well, thanks.
I'm really sorry.
Thanks. I don't actually remember you not asking, so it was probably you asking for forgiveness instead of permission.
I think that was...
Because I was never going to give permission.
No, you were never going to say yes, so I just made sure that I had the trailer. I knew I could get through it at some point. We're getting into the section about strengths and weaknesses. Mm-hmm. So first question is, what do you do better than me, and what do you think I do better than you do?
I think that I process things quicker than you do. I think my brain works a little faster than yours, and that's not meant as an insult, just a difference in maybe male, female, but just the way that we think about things and the way that we process things. And there's strengths and weaknesses in both of those, because sometimes I underthink things and sometimes you overthink things. And I think that what you do better than me is just probably you don't worry as much as I do, but you also are better at having tough conversations than I am.
I think that's fair.
How about you? What do you think?
Oh, gosh. You're just throwing the same question back at me?
I am.
Okay, so what do I do better than you?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. Better.
The answer is nothing.
I knew the answer to
Right?
that question. Do you want to be right?
Yeah.
Or do you want to be happy?
Yeah.
I think maybe just more on from the structural side. I think, just having been involved in, hundreds and hundreds of builds, from tracks to custom, just seeing how things go together at an intimate level, just repetitively, right? I think a lot of people have seen it or gone through it once or twice or been at a certain phase in construction at a certain point in time, but you really don't, in my opinion, you really don't start to pick up the nitty gritty of really how everything truly works together until you've kind of been through that, in the field over and over and over again, because I think each time you see something, you see a framer stand a wall or just something simple, you might pick up something new. And I think that as the years go by, you just become a little bit more in tune with how those things go together and how they work together.
Yeah. I mean, my brain very much works with, I want the finished product to look like this. I really don't care how it goes together. And you're like,
Oh, I'm aware.
crap, how am I going to build that?
The design part of it is just, is hands down. Like you have an ability to see like color and, just, I don't even know how to explain it. Like but I think maybe a way to help describe what I'm thinking, even though I can't really articulate it very well, is there are frequently times where you will send me an email with some like preliminary thoughts or some preliminary ideas on a project. And I would say that most of us in the office are like, wow, that looks good. And it's really cool, I think, for somebody in our profession who's doing this for somebody else to still feel like they're wowed, right? And so I think that's very cool, because I get your design sometimes, and you would think that I would just be like, oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. We've done this 100 times, but I feel like you have the ability to kind of uniquely spin each project and really like pick up on some of the like finite details that I don't do very well. And I think that's really important, because, those clients are looking for those types of details, right? They're looking for you to pick out and extract what their kind of design styles and elements are. And I think that's very unique about just designers in general, but I think you do that very well.
That's very sweet. I think I appreciate that, because I think my whole philosophy when I'm working with a client is about what their style is and what they want to see in their home, and not necessarily what I want to see or what I think looks best, or even, what I would do in my home. It's a reflection of the family that's living in the home. And so I like to try and give that to them when I'm working on stuff. So It's nice to see that you noticed that.
Yeah, I'll give you one last one here.
Okay.
So in what situation do you definitely want me handling things instead of you?
Easy.
Oh, yeah?
Easy.
I think I know what it is.
Difficult conversations.
Yeah.
Whether it be with employees, clients. I hate confrontation.
I know.
I hate it.
I know this about you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you're so good at it. You're so good at it. You have such a way of speaking to people even when it's conflict, that is so respectful but firm, and you do a really good job at it. And that's probably why I don't want to do it, because I know that you can do it better. So you get to do it now.
Well, thanks. So we always tell clients it's like good cop, bad cop. So you just get to be good cop all the time.
I just get to be fun.
Okay. Well,
so what would you absolutely not want me to be dealing with? What is something you would not want me to have to deal with?
Toilet placement. I want to place the toilets on every single job.
We just need to move it an inch.
Yeah, but the problem is you either want to move it an inch or you want to move it onto the other side of the wall on like the third floor.
Okay, fair.
So
fair.
Toilets. That's my job.
Okay.
So now we're in the business dynamics section. So first question here is, walk me through what happens when you and I disagree about a design decision with a client, and how do we handle that?
Well, I don't think we ever disagree once it's in front of the client. I think it's before that.
Yeah,
I think it's during like the initial layout or space planning phase, and I think usually we're on the same page with stuff, but sometimes we're not. And I think it's because, again, just our brains work differently in the way that we see and like visualize or brainstorm about things. Like, I think both of us actually kind of have to do it. Like we have to use our CAD program to model what's in our brains rather than trying to like articulate it to each other. So I think we can misalign sometimes on explaining like our individual visions for the space until we like show each other. But I think that think that's one that I win more often than I lose.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, you're right. And going back to even the question or the comment that you made about just our brain, you get to the point quicker as kind of
Yeah.
a summary of what you were saying. And that is true. I tend to overthink things sometimes because in my brain, I feel like I want to go through all the possible scenarios to be able to rule some of those out. And I think that, even Jordan is probably a little bit better at this than I am, is just sometimes just like, let's just start with the path of really like the path of simplicity, and maybe even not the path of least resistance. Usually that is, but just let's take the path of simplicity and let's figure out if that works first. And I think you guys kind of take that route. And it's not that I'm going the complex route, but sometimes I'm trying to solve some problems that aren't really problems yet. So yeah, I do think you do that better for sure.
Yeah. How do you think we make sure our personal relationship doesn't interfere with making the best business decisions for our business or for our clients?
Oh gosh. To be honest, I mean, I think that we have common goal, right? Our common goal is to get the client, to the end and as happy as possible. So I don't think there's a lot of disagreement that happens, during or even before. I think, again, if we disagree, usually it's pretty early on, right? How are we going to lay this thing out? What's the best way to keep clients, close to their budget? These are all the things I think are, just kind of where we might have a little bit of hiccup or disagreement. But beyond that, I think we stick to that kind of common goal of what is the best way to help the client get to the end as as quickly as possible, but also with, just the least amount of hiccup,
Yeah.
And making sure that they're staying on budget as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. I think we just, in general, I mean, and maybe like our employees would disagree, but I think we don't sweat the small stuff kind of. I know we've talked a lot of times about like we could be having a more intense discussion at work, or maybe appearing to not be pleased with one another, or just having a firm conversation where we're not in total alignment, but neither one of us like take that personally or carry it home.
Yeah.
Usually I think we both are pretty good at like differentiating, work Brenna and work Rusty. And I don't know, you're very different at home than you are at work. So
Interesting. Yeah. I think that's very true. I think that some of this is probably learned, right? Over time, we just realized that there are two very different sides to our life, right? We really do have to keep work at work and, keep home at home. And that doesn't always mean that we don't have conversations about jobs. I mean, I'm the worst at it by far.
I think that was one of the questions in here.
Was it? Okay, well, man, we can retouch on this, but I definitely, will bring work home, more periodically. And I think sometimes, usually you leave a little bit before I do. So I think a lot of times I'm feeling like the end of my day I need to like catch you up on, and you don't necessarily, I don't want to say you don't care, but, at that moment
I'm
in that
out of
day,
work
you're
mode.
kind of checked out of work mode, and I'm still in it and trying to wind back down. But I think for the most part, we still do a pretty good job of keeping these very separate. We've been blessed with having a lot of really good clients that are very respectful to that, understand that, just because you get home in the evening, at 6 or whatever, and you get to see your project doesn't necessarily mean that we want to continue to work and talk about your project right now. So, and that can be tough because, again, people who aren't at their project all day long, they're excited or they've got something to say. And so it can be tough to kind of juggle those things, but it is important to us to have that like family, work-life balance. And we've made that really important to our employees as well, telling them like, family needs to come first. And it's nice, the more employees that we get, that allows all of us to have that balance. If something does come up, somebody can help cover for the other so that they can have that balance, served.
I think that was harder for us in the earlier days too, when I wasn't in the office as much when I was working more part-time and, picking up kids and going to field trips and doing some of that. I think that made it more challenging to not talk about work, in the evening or once we got home, because we just didn't have that FaceTime in front of each other like we do now.
Yeah, I agree.
So let's move into personality and work style. How would you describe the difference between how we each handle stress?
I think it depends on what is being stressed about. I think that, this is just you naturally. This doesn't mean this is you about in business, but naturally you've historically stressed about money, right? I think that, and I'm a little more loosey-goosey. I'm like, hey, as long as the lights are on and, we've got enough money to buy food, we're okay. I feel like I'm just a little bit more like nonchalant about that. But then on the flip side, I'm stressing out about silly things. I'm stressing out about, I didn't get to an email or I didn't get because, it's so difficult to, and again, this is not unique to my job or my position, but there are frequently so many distractions in a day. And sometimes, it's just as simple as phone calls, right? You're not expecting or anticipating phone calls either from a client or a new prospective lead. And I mean, I could be on the phone with a new lead for an hour. So if I get 2 of those phone calls a day, there's 2 hours of my day that's not gone, but right, that's just wasn't planned for. So I think at some point in those types of situations, I get done with the call and I feel good, but then I look back at the to-do list and I'm like, man, I'm not going to get to that. And so those are the things that I think I tend to stress out about is just, I usually come in the morning and I have a kind of a task list or a list of things that I'd like to get done that day, which I think is pretty normal. Most people probably operate a similar way. And so when those don't get done, or especially if I don't get, a bulk of those items done, or sometimes if I didn't even touch that list, that's usually what I'm stressing about.
Yeah.
So, question for you is, how do you think that our shared values show up in the client experience?
Well, I would hope that it's apparent that we, above all else, want to be ethical and transparent, I guess, with our clients, that we have their best interest in mind. I know at the core of like who each of us are, that's why we do what we do, right? I mean, obviously we're in this to make money, but we don't have an extravagant lifestyle, and we're really here to please our clients and do what we enjoy doing. So I think that shines through in what we do, and that people can, when they get to know us, they can genuinely feel that that's how we operate. But I think it takes a little while for people to get there not with us, but because our industry has this very stereotypical view of like, don't trust.
Yeah.
Or you've always heard the stories about people who've been burned by a contractor, or they're just taking them to the cleaners, or all of that. So it takes a little while for us to break through that stereotype with our clients. And because we get to spend so much time with them in the beginning phases, I think that our morals kind of shine through when people get to know us.
Yeah.
So, and I think we're very much aligned on that. I can't even think of all the times where we've just decided to do something because it was the right thing to do and not because it was the cheap thing to do.
Of course. Yeah. I mean, I think that does go back to the builder, one of the builders that we worked for. They really had that mentality of, if it's not right, you tear it out and you redo it, right? If it's not truly fixable, or it doesn't look new, or doesn't look like it was supposed to look, you tear it out and you do it again.
Yeah.
And I think we've really carried a lot of that into our business, and just kind of the moral and ethical part of our business. If something is not working right, if something's not feeling right, a client is truly or genuinely not happy with something, we want to figure out how to make that client really feel like they got what they were paying for.
Yeah. Yeah. So what happens when one of us really likes a potential client, but the other one has reservations?
I think we're actually pretty good about bouncing those thoughts off of each other, because I think if you've got a client that's coming in and there are some red flags, and I just want it's not a secret that we get clients who call us and there are some red flags, and we know sometimes immediately that they are not going to be the right fit for us. And sometimes they get a little bit through the process before we actually figure that out.
Yeah.
And that's tough, because I never want to take a client. We never want to take a client that we don't think we're going to be ultimately helping them, right? And we want to make sure that we are a good fit. And I think sometimes you may pick up on something that's kind of a red flag, maybe something that's happened in the past that, we really should be focusing on, and maybe I don't pick up on it, or vice versa. But I think that we're really good about listening to each other in those moments, because life is way too short to have miserable people working with you, right? Or to be miserable because they're miserable.
Yeah.
Like I really want to take clients. We want to take clients that see the value in what we do and are just nice people, right? Like, we are also nice people, I think. And I think not everybody would feel that way, but there are definitely people that you're going to feel aligned with, and they're going to just generally feel like they are aligned with you and your morals and your ethics, and they're going to appreciate that, right? And so those are the clients that you want to work with, because those are the easiest relationships, because it's easier to build trust with each other, right? And when you feel like that. And I think it's important for there to be trust in both on both sides, right? It's very important that each person trusts the other, because if you don't, it's just not worth going into a project for either party, right? I really feel like there should be 100% trust in from both sides.
Yeah. I think this is an area where we're super aligned and we really trust each other's judgment on. Usually we see the same things. We're pretty good at reading people, and we both are on the same page when we discuss, those clients. But I think if one of us has a reservation one way or the other, then it's just okay. Then that's great. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to push, like we say this all the time. We say this to our potential clients, like life is too short to work with people that you don't enjoy working with, right?
Sure.
We only do 15 to 20 projects a year. I mean, that's not many people.
Yeah.
And we spend a lot of time with people. So,
Well, I think it boils down to communication.
Yeah.
It's important for me. I know it's important for you too. It's important. So maybe it's just important for us to know that we're going to be able to communicate well with somebody, because if you can't communicate well with somebody through their project, there's likely to be some problem, right? And the last thing you want is to not feel like you can communicate well with somebody. Just because you are a good communicator doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to communicate well with everyone,
Right.
Or that person's going to communicate well back with you. You may just, we say this not literally, but more figuratively, is like, do we speak the same language, right? Because if we're constantly misinterpreting what each other are saying, it's probably going to be pretty rocky, right? And we may want to think about that. If we're just having those problems, especially in like through pre-construction, we probably don't want to get into a project where we're spending 4 or 5+ months together trying to work through even more difficult situations and not being able to communicate effectively.
Yeah, for sure. If you had to give advice to another couple thinking about working together, what would you tell them?
Run. No, I think couples that I would say this. I think that couples who genuinely enjoy each other's company, I think that it's probably a good idea, right? I think you should definitely explore that if you enjoy your partner. I say this because there may be somebody that's going to listen to this at some point, and they're going to be sitting next to their partner, and they're going to be thinking like, "Oh crap, I probably shouldn't go into business with my wife or my husband." But I do think that that's extremely important, right? Like I think sometimes people even point out to us how much time we spend together. Like we literally spend almost all day, every day together. You really do have to enjoy someone's presence to be with them all the time.
Yeah.
Right. So it is important. And it's important. We talk about this too. I don't want to go sideways here, but it's important for us to have kind of our own time as well. And we do that. We carve out time for ourselves. And there are times where you're doing your thing, or I'm working in my shop, or you're working on what you're working on, or you're going shopping, or you're getting your nails done. Like these are things that I think are all very important to anybody. But on the flip side, like if you're going to work with your partner, your spouse, like it is very important that not only do you get along, but you probably enjoy each other's company to some degree, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a lot of time spent together.
Yeah, for sure. I think having a great deal of respect for one another is probably pretty critical. And not to say that, most couples don't have that, but I mean, it's taken us a lot of years to get in the rhythm of things though too. And not every day has been sunshine and rainbows, right? And,
Yeah.
but I think just you have to know how you are as a couple to know if you could do that. Like some couples just can't, right? Some couples need time away from each other and, so.
Okay, so this next section is titled Communication and Conflict. How do we fight differently at work versus home?
That's an easy question. We kind of don't fight at home. I think we only fight at work.
I think that's really mostly true.
It is.
I think most people wouldn't believe that. I think some of our friends who actually know us probably think that that's true, but I also think that there are a lot of people who present themselves a certain way, right? We talk about this all the time. There's people that, post a million pictures of themselves online and sometimes behind the scene, they're probably not really that happy, right? And I think that we maybe don't post a ton of stuff. Maybe we do. I don't really know. I guess that's a little subjective, but we do actually, we get along very well. I think we have a pretty good home life. I feel very fortunate to have what we have and the family that we have. Our kids are turning out to be pretty awesome. So I'm really happy about that, of course. Who wouldn't be? Even really at work, we get kind of pissy with each other, for lack of a better term, but we don't really fight. There's not a lot of, there's no yelling or screaming, right? Like that's not, I would say that we definitely disagree, and sometimes we get very frustrated with each other. And I think that's usually, what most people would, or what we even are interpreting right now, I'm not trying to speak for you, but I think how we would interpret this question would be, how do you, our fighting comes out in the form of frustration, I think.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times I don't think that it's very rare that we, say mean things to each other or, actually, like I said, get loud or it's just not really our style. But we might get frustrated. We might walk out of the room.
But usually that doesn't require a resolution. Like it's just, okay, I'm irritated. I just need to go away from you for now.
That's true.
So that kind of leads into this next question. So how do you know when I'm actually mad versus just frustrated?
Ooh, that's a tough one. Actually mad versus just frustrated. Man,
This is funny.
I feel like I should have the answer to this question, but I'm not sure that I actually know. I guess I would have to be there in the moment. I think if you're actually mad, I usually know. I think that there's kind of like I think there's layers of frustration, right? And I think that I can frustrate you, and I think I get to a point where that I know that you're frustrated, and then I don't let off. And so I think if I do that because I'm just trying to poke at you a little bit more, or I'm trying to, push my own, narrative, whatever it is, I think that's where I tip the scales and potentially, make you actually mad.
Yeah, I'd agree.
So this next section is called the industry perspective. So there's just one question for each of us. So would you like to start or would you like me to start?
You go for it.
Okay.
You got to flip the page back. Your question's on the other page at the bottom.
Brenna? This is Brenna.
Oh, it does. My apologies. You're right.
Can you say I was right?
I was right.
That's not what I said. Do you think clients trust us more or less because we're married?
Oh, I think more.
I agree.
I think, and not to toot my own horn here, but I think I softened the contractor experience because we do usually our initial meetings together. And I think having me come along makes it easier for people to trust us because they're not meeting with just some gruff contractor.
This goes back to the part we just talked about earlier in this about the shell that people kind of put on because they're so concerned about contractors taking advantage of them, maybe just not doing what they say that they're going to do. There's just kind of a little bit of a stigma in the industry, and rightly so. The contractor, there are so many contractors who are I would say there are less that are bad people or bad actors than there are contractors that are just very poor planners. And because they're poor planners, they come off as being the bad guy, or bad things happen, right? Where they're naturally just more change orders. They're just more problems on a project that doesn't have, a good pre-planning process. And so for that reason, contractors typically kind of get a bad name. They just don't spend the time with the client solving these problems before they get into construction. We always say they're trying to solve them in the middle of construction. And generally that costs the client money.
What do you think the biggest misconception people have about family business in construction?
I do think that people feel like they're going to get more of that kind of, experience that's, that small shop experience, or that like boutique. We kind of reference it as like a boutique style, experience. I think that there are people that want that, right? They want to know that who they're working with from the beginning is kind of the same person that they're going to be working with throughout. And I think some people actually really like the idea, on the other end of the spectrum of going to like a box store, right? They like the idea of kind of the security that, that big name brand has, right? So if something goes wrong, right, they know, and I'll just say it because everybody knows the box stores, but, like Home Depot, for example, you walk into Home Depot, you're going to get something very, very different from what we're going to provide, right? But there could be, like I said, that kind of layer or that umbrella of security, feeling like if something goes wrong, like there's a million different people that you can call. Whereas if in our situation, if you didn't really feel like, or maybe you had a bad experience before, you might see us and think, well, gosh, if something bad happens, who else do I call? I can only call that same person that's actually making me upset. So this last section before the closing is called looking forward. So what's one of the things about our working relationship that you would want to see improved over the next few years?
So I don't know that it's so much about our working relationship more than it is about just the growth of our business and just making sure we continue to grow and find what we've always put as like kind of our exit goal, and removing ourselves out of the day-to-day business and replacing ourselves with qualified people and all of that. So I don't know if that's necessarily like our working relationship, but just the goals that we have for our business in general. So as we grow the business, how do we maintain the personal touch with our clients?
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, I've always thought about that. And I think, we've really transitioned, you and I, to that more of that sales role, right? So we're working with people through really pre-construction and up and into the point where they're effectively signing a construction contract, right? And then from that point forward, there's actually there's a very low interaction because now we've replaced ourselves with that part of the business. So that does get really tough. It's like, how do you keep that touch? I mean, I think at the end of the day, our clients know that they can call us anytime, right? Especially once they're in contract with us. We make ourselves available. What's interesting, though, is because we've hired such great people over the years, we've really almost kind of curbed that completely. I mean, I'm just thinking about Pam, right? Like, how many times has Pam, called me through her project? I mean, I actually think the answer is zero,
Yeah.
right? And we have talked a couple of times, but the reality is that she doesn't need me,
Yeah.
right? She's in good hands with the people that we've hired. And when we hand those projects off, I mean, she's actually talked to, this is her second go around with us, right? She's actually seen a modified older version of our process, and now she's seeing this kind of improved process. And what was she, maybe 4 or 5 years ago? And so in 5 years, she's seen some pretty dramatic improvement. But I bet you we've talked much less than when we talked back then, right? I was a lot more involved because I needed to be. And now I don't need to be nearly as much. And they don't feel like, our clients don't feel like that either, right? They feel like they're in good hands. And I think that's, as we continue to grow, I think we can continue to replace the parts and pieces of the things that we do, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we're out of reach or we're not there.
Yeah. So if you had to do it all over again, would you still choose to work with me?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I would.
You can't get rid of me.
No, I can't. I know we always joke about how silly it was that we took this leap, at that moment. And, being young and a little bit dumb just helped us get through that, right? I think because had we known what we know now, we would have known that we weren't prepared. We would have known that we weren't ready. But I do think that that's helped us a lot in growing our business because we didn't start from something. We literally started from nothing. We started without having a good plan. We started without any money, right? We started with really, truly nothing, and we've built the business from the ground up. Lots of respect. There are a lot of people out there who've done the same thing. There are also a lot of people that were kind of either handed businesses or had good business mentors right next to them to do that. And this is not suggesting that we didn't maybe have access to that. We didn't know that we needed access to this, right? So what's the legacy that you want to leave behind for this industry?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So I think we talk about this a lot with our coaching group too, and it's really about changing the industry. And I think like the biggest point to that is like curbing that stereotypical thought about a contractor and being disorganized and you can't trust them and it's always 6 months longer than it's supposed to be and 50% over budget. And I think it's fighting for the respect that we deserve from our clients, because I think that sometimes because there's so many contractors that don't do this well, that's where the expectation is. And so I think changing that perception of this industry, and I feel like this is really the direction of where our industry is going anyway. And we're seeing this concept grow within our own community across the nation as we talk with, our peers in our networking group I could go so deep as the shortage of people who work in the trades and people that know how to do this job really well are the ones that are going to stick around and really make this a desirable industry to be in.
I agree. I think more so than maybe saying like what legacy like I personally want to leave, I think that I give a lot of pride in myself and what we do in being a part of the the kind of the movement that is educating people on why construction has been so broken, especially in residential construction, for so long, and how it's kind of morphed into what it is now. And just again, having some pride in educating people on how we can change that, right? And how they can be a part of the change as well. Because I do think that it takes an educated consumer as well. They need to understand why it should be like this. They need to understand why they should be paying for things up front, right? Versus trying to ask for them for free. And I think once we can kind of get through a little bit of that shift, I do think that people will see how much better it does actually work. And I think we will see the industry move in that direction. And this process that we're preaching right now, 2025, is not something in 2050 that's going to be something that is so hard to understand, right? I think it is right now because we are, collectively, and I don't mean we as me and you, I mean we as a group of contractors. There are lots of contractors throughout our geographical region and throughout the United States that are really preaching these pre-construction processes and the different processes that really truly help keep clients safe and protect them from, getting in their own way and protect them from, bad actors as well. And I just think that that's something that I really want to kind of dedicate the last of my working years doing, is helping educate people on how to do that, how to get there.
Yeah. 2 last questions maybe here. One for me, one for you.
Sounds good. What is the one thing about our partnership that you're most proud of?
Well, there's a lot of things that I'm proud of. For one, that we've made it this far. 2, that we've done it together. And the road hasn't always been easy, but our commitment to the business and each other really hasn't wavered. And we've done that all alongside raising a family and having kids that are active in sports and, having this whole other version of our life that is also busy and complicated. And just the fact that we've done it together and with a smile for the most part.
Yeah. We touched on how we don't live, an extravagant lifestyle. And I think we've done that for a little bit of a reason, right? We've decided that we've wanted to, live kind of at or even kind of below our means. And we want to save for the future so that we can actually retire, which is not always something that, a lot of business owners can do. So we've really kind of set our sights on, making sure that we can kind of provide ourselves a retirement as business owners. And I think that we've also, done a really good job of kind of balancing, what we make and what we save so that we can actually do fun things with our family and go on vacations and, do a lot of things that business owners actually, especially new business owners, really can't do. We actually struggled with that early in business because we didn't know how to make money. We knew how to get money, but that's different than making money, right? It's a lot different than being able to charge appropriately so that not only the client is getting what they're getting, but you have enough to actually make a living off of, right? And so I really feel grateful that we've been able to, I won't say travel because we didn't do a lot of traveling, but we've done a lot of local traveling.
We've been up to a lot of hockey rinks.
Yeah, I think a lot of that has to do with sports. But, I'm really glad that we figured that out, right? That we figured out at least how to, make a reasonable living so that we could support, our kids and their, ventures through sports. And, I'm really thankful because we didn't really get a chance to do that as kids, right? I wanted to play hockey, and we've really given that kind of experience to our son who also loves hockey, and our daughter, loved to play soccer, and she got to do that. And we got to do that and travel with them. And that was really important to me to be able to provide that to them. And this business and our hard work is really, and our clients, right? Our clients have allowed us to be able to do that. I'm really grateful for that.
Yeah, me too. So final question. Any advice for couples who are considering a major construction project together?
Oof.
Call us.
Yeah. Yeah, I say this a lot, and I genuinely mean it. I really implore people to do some research, call around, but don't try to get bids before you have a true plan, okay? And this is what I'm saying. I want people to really ask people that they're interviewing, what is your process? Do you have a process? The process should be to create you something robust on paper with a lot of detail before you're ever signing a construction contract. Anyone who's quick to get you to construction contract, you probably want to run. I really want people to focus on figuring out what it is that they provide, call references, ask them how the project went, okay? And I also want to tell people, here's a trick. Maybe it's not a trick, but I do want you to ask this question. When you are interviewing a contractor, I want you to ask them, can I have the phone number of anyone who is actively under construction with you right now? Who better to tell you about how the project's going than somebody who's actively in the middle of it? I always say a client references list is really easy to create. I can put all my favorite clients on there who I know love me and are going to say nice things about me, but I'm going to leave all the ones off that were bad, right? Or that we didn't get along. So it's important for you to understand that anybody can make that really neat client references list, right? I want you to ask for somebody who's actively under construction with them, and I want you to ask them how that project is going. But I would say do your homework, make sure that they have a process, and make sure you check references. Well, hey, I appreciate it. Thank you guys very much. This was podcast episode number 4. We're still working on bugging out systems and voices and audio. This is obviously not what we do, but we are very passionate about what we do in the construction and design world. So hopefully we'll get through some of these technical things. But we definitely appreciate you listening. So thanks.